Hey, early birds, how we doing today? Hello. I hope everyone had a good weekend. Doing good. Okay, good. Is my audio sound good? I have a new cooling pad for my janky laptop, and that does seem to be helping. I gotta say that the noise cancellation on Twitch is just impeccable. It's amazing. Well, yeah, I hope everybody had a good Sunday today, and we'll get started in about 3 minutes. Um, that was my dog. um, yeah, we'll get started in about 3 minutes. It's actually pretty cold here today where I live. I've been cold pretty much all day. I have a I have a nice hot cup of tea here, so hopefully that'll help. And I'm wearing a sweatshirt, but still cold. Hey, inadequate, welcome. What tea am I drinking? Well, so I drink a lot of tea, like multiple cups per day. So I don't buy the expensive stuff. I buy the basically the store brand cheapest bargain basement black tea. This is store brand black tea that I'm drinking. Plain black tea, leaf water. Still good though. I like it. Good old leaf juice. Yep, that's pretty much what all this is. It is not a high quality product, but hey, I like it. And it's like $3 for like 100 bags or something ridiculous. So oh, yeah, you getting heartburn. Yeah, I don't even know. I think I consume probably 3 to 4 cups, but yeah, you guys have seen my mug. It's like I forget, like a 16-ounce mug or something. So I guess that's about 8 cups. If you're talking 8-ounce cups. Yeah. Yeah, I had issues with heartburn for a little while. That seems to have resolved itself. I don't think it was related to the tea. Um, but yeah, that's a good point. Depending on what your triggers are, the that could anything in excess, I suppose, could trigger heartburn. All right, we'll give it one more minute for folks to trickle in here. Supersize leaf water. Yeah, it pretty much is. Yeah, I drink my coffee. I drink my coffee out of normal size mugs, though. I'm not like like I'm not a crazy caffeine freak drinking, you know, highly caffeinated stuff out of giant mugs too. Just like my big mugs for my tea. Yeah, Xena. Yeah. So I think you definitely should. You should. Xena asks if they haven't read the Eloquent JS yet. Think I should review it regardless after the stream. Yes. Especially with Eloquent JS, it takes multiple passes to really get it into your brain. And I'm not saying that I fully understand it yet either. I was able to do the problems, yeah, but do I fully understand all the concepts? No. And I think it'll be worth reviewing again probably after we cover getters and setters in class, which I think we're going to do probably in the next class. After we kind of Leon talks a little bit more about classes and such. So I think this will be worth another pass later on. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome. Imagine having the superpower that allows you to fully learn something after a single stream. Yeah. No, I mean I'm the one doing the streams, and I still don't understand it after a single stream. So hello. Yeah. Okay. Let me get to the right scene here so y'all can see my screen. Okay, there we go. All right, and another thing we're also going to practice tonight, I thought might be good, considering some of the chat that I saw on Leon's office hours today, and just in general. I thought maybe we'd also just cover setting up a repo and initializing a GitHub repo and pushing, committing and pushing to that repo as we go. I still think that's it's valuable for me to practice. It's valuable for everyone to practice, and so we're going to go ahead and do that as well. We're going to set up a private repo though on my end because. Don't want you all just going and downloading my homework. So y'all can code along. You'll figure it out from what we're doing. So yeah, that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover Eloquent JavaScript, and we're also going to get a little practical application of GitHub. Oh, my stream closed captioner just reminded me that I need to turn on my closed captions. So let me do that. I'm so glad that's a feature because otherwise I would not remember. So let me get that going. Oh, don't make me log in again. All right. Okay, starting captions. Okay, captions should be going, theoretically. I'm going to move it to a new window so it doesn't time out. All right, there we go. Okay, so you should have captions if you need them. Feel free to disable if you don't need them. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So any questions before we do get started? Thanks, Rascal. Oh, and also too, let me just give you a link to what we're doing. Hey, Cranberry, welcome. Good to have you here. Here's a link to the text. CJ, wait, is this your homework? Yeah, this is push work. So it's not necessarily due on Tuesday. It's a little extra if we want to get a little nuts. And we're gonna get nuts. Should have captains. It's me. Look at me. I am the captain now. Yes, I'm the caption now. Yeah. Yeah, CJ. So yeah, this is our homework. But it's optional homework, so you don't have to do it. Okay, here we go. So there's 4 questions in the Eloquent JavaScript. But as always, it's these 4 questions take as much time as 8 or 10 in any other homework. So they're meaty questions. There's a lot to them, right? So and I've gone ahead in my VS Code. I've already created a folder in my documents. I've already created a folder in my documents that will hold our questions here. So let's go ahead and we'll create a separate JavaScript file for each one of these. And oh man, Rascal, I don't know, like just the actual problems themselves, they don't take what would I rank them as? There's some of the problems are pretty short, like when you actually code them out, but just understanding what's being asked is the hard part. So I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 Q, just with the denseness of the wording, right? So we'll create some files here for these. For.js. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's just the barriers to to understanding can be pretty high on these. There's a lot of concepts that are thrown at you all at once. But I don't know. Others might not reckon the same. It just depends on how familiar you are with objects. I think maybe if you have some introduction to objects from other languages, like maybe Python or something like that, then maybe it's a little easier. I do not have prior knowledge of objects, so SQL is not itself object oriented. It can have object oriented stuff done to it, but it's not an object oriented language, so I don't really have a background in it. All right, so we've created a separate JavaScript file for each one of these bad boys here of the problems. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our GitHub repo. So I have my GitHub account pulled up here. Got to get those squares, right? And we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new repo to push these problems to. We're going to create a private repo, as I mentioned before. So just go to the repositories here, and we'll just click new. And we're going to go ahead and just call this, I already have a private repo for my actual homework, but this is just for demonstrations purposes. So we're going to call it EJS demo. Oops, no, there. Okay. And we're going to mark it as private. And yeah, then we'll go ahead and just click create. That's really all we need to do. If you want, you can put a description. If you already have a README file that you've created, you can add that as well here, but we're just going to keep it bare bones for now. We'll create a repository. And here, if you notice, on the creation screen, it does give you basically kind of a step-by-step walkthrough of how to initialize the repo. And kind of link it to and set the origin. So essentially, you're going to link your local folder on your computer, whatever folder you're working in. This will help you link it to your GitHub repo, so that when you do future commits, so that when you do future pushes, it just goes there without you having to do anything special. So what we can do is we can really just copy and paste this, and we'll go into our Git Bash, or whatever you're using. I use Git Bash. That's a little small. See if I can make it a little bigger for you. And we're already in my documents folder. You can see I was pushing some code wars earlier. I was pushing some code wars to GitHub. Hey, Ryan, welcome. And so we're in my documents folder. So we're going to go ahead and cd into the folder that I want to be in, that we want to link up. So my folder is called, let's see if I get this right. Well, I guess it's one word, so I don't need to. EJS, CH06 4 demo. That should do it. Yeah. All right. So now we're in the appropriate folder. So we're in the folder where we're going to be coding our problems, right? And so now we can go ahead and basically just take everything that we copied. So I'll just copy this again just to be sure. And we can paste it into our Git Bash, and it'll kind of self-execute. So in order, if you haven't figured it out yet, to copy and to paste into Git Bash, at least in my situation, I have to right click. So I right click, which pastes. And you can see down here, it's ready to execute the last command, which is essentially linking our local folder with our GitHub repo. So if I do this, it'll link it and on the main branch, which is what we want. So there we go. And we are linked up. And we can see that our main branch is set up to track between our local folder and our GitHub repo. So now we can see that my VS Code display has changed a little bit. And I now have multiple uncommitted files, which these are empty, so we don't need to commit them yet, but we will after we start making changes to them. So after we finish each problem, we'll go ahead and we'll do a commit and a push just to practice that. So don't let me forget. If I forget, yell at me and make me commit and push. So I'm going to hydrate. Alrighty. So any questions on that before we get started? Hey, happy Sunday to you as well. Okay, well, let's get into it. And seeing no questions, we'll go ahead and dive in. All right, so the first question is called a vector type. Zena asks, is this any different from going to the repo and hitting the green code button and cloning? So you mean going into the repo itself, like here? And are you and like this? I'm not quite sure which green button you're referring to. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, you can do all this stuff in the GUI. You can do all this stuff in the user interface that's on GitHub itself. Yeah, you can do literally every single thing we did there. It's just that when you create the repo, GitHub just gives you the code that you can just paste straight into Bash. So it's fewer clicks that way. And I think Leon, does want us to work in Bash when possible. But yeah, you can do everything through the UI as well. I don't think that neither of these is any worse than the other. Yeah, it's just a different process and order of steps. Neither of them is better or worse. I'm just trying to practice getting good at using Git Bash. Because my workplace, I'm trying to champion using GitHub at my workplace, and so I'm trying to be familiar, get more familiar with the mechanics of it, so that because I'm going to have to really sell it to a lot of people, like sell the process and sell what you do, especially to a lot of old school Unix type people. So I got to get familiar. Dude, why jump to exercises? Well, so the goal of this stream isn't really to read the whole chapter at you. It's more of just to try to talk through the exercise. Otherwise, we would be here. We could be here for until midnight. Really, the goal of my streams are generally to just kind of hit the problems, work through the problems, see what the concepts are, and and just try to work through the homework that we've been given. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's folks out there that will, read the whole, they'll get on a Discord voice channel and read the whole text if that's something that you're looking for. It's really not what we're going to be doing here, though. Okay, so first, but we are going to talk about, like, I'm not just going to code them for you. We are going to talk about the concepts that go into solving these. I'm not just going to give you the answer. We're going to work through it together. Okay, so vector type. Write a class vec that represents a vector in two-dimensional space. It takes x and y parameters, which it should save to properties of the same name. Give the vec prototype two methods, plus and minus, then take another vector as a parameter and return a new vector that has the sum or difference of the two vectors, this and the parameter, x and y values. Add a getter property length to the prototype that computes the length of the vector. That is the distance of the point xy from the origin 0, 0. Wow. Okay. There is a lot going on there, right? So let's take it and let's split it out. Let's make this easier to digest. So I'm going to grab the whole thing and I'm going to dump it into VS Code here. I'm going to comment out the top part and we're going to chop it up. All right. Write a class vec that represents a vector in two-dimensional space. Okay, so that's the first class. That's the first task. We got to write a class, and we know how to do that. The next thing is it should take two parameters, x and y, which it should also save to properties of the same name. Okay, so that's actually two separate tasks there. Takes x and y, should save to properties of the same name. Give the vec prototype two methods, plus and minus, okay? And those should take another vector as a parameter, okay? And return a new vector that has the sum or difference of the two vectors x and y values. Okay, so we'll just stop there for now, and we'll go to we'll do the initial setup, and then we'll think about the calculations that need to happen. Okay. And then they did give us, hopefully, some console log statements so we can test and make sure things are working as expected. So we know how to declare a class, don't we? So we just say class, and they told us what to call it. They told us to call it vec. Okay, so that's the first thing down, right? Well, thanks, Ryan. Yeah. With these, especially with Eloquent and JavaScript in particular, the questions are so dense that you literally got to parse them out by sometimes like half a sentence at a time, right? To figure out exactly what it's asking and what order to do it in. Okay, so we've declared a class. Now, it says it takes x and y parameters, which it should save to properties of the same name. Okay, so inside of a class, if we want to take in parameters and assign them to properties, how do we do that? Inside of a class, what do we specifically need? sorry if you can hear that. My dog is asleep on the floor and he's like dreaming and yipping a little bit in his sleep. Yes. Yeah. So Snarfin, yeah, you're right. We need a constructor inside of our class. So the way we take in, yeah, y'all got it. So the way we take in parameters into a class, specifically a class, is we take in parameters and into a constructor and then attach them to properties. Yep. Y'all got it. I know this stuff is still fairly new, so we're going to go, pretty slow, and I'm going to try to ask regular questions to make sure that y'all are grokking what I'm putting down. All right, so constructor. Okay. And we're going to take in, they told us we're going to take in two parameters, x and y. So just like in a function, we just list them out like that. And so inside of my constructor, I'm going to have two properties. So it should save these to properties of the same name. So inside of my constructor, when I'm first setting up a property, so my property is essentially going to be called X and Y. But how do I state them inside of my constructor? I can't just say X equals X, right? I can't just say that. That's not going to work. What do I need to say instead? Yeah. This dot X equals X, and this dot Y equals Y. Exactly. Yep. Y'all got the concept. Awesome. Okay. So that's the first part taken care of. So we've done all this. So, we've done all this. Sorry, we've done all this first section. So that's done. Cool. Done. First part of the question down. All right. Give the vec prototype two methods, plus and minus. Okay, so methods, if we recall, those are like functions that exist inside of our class. And so I'm going to just declare two methods. We're not going to worry about what they do for now. We're just going to set them up. Plus, going to do stuff. And also, sorry, when I'm declaring it, I need to have my parameters there. And minus, which is also going to do stuff. Okay, so we gave our prototype two methods, plus and minus. And these methods should take another vector as a parameter. Okay, so remember, a parameter is just what we feed into a function or a method, right? So we're going to call my parameter vector2. We could call it whatever we wanted. We could call it beans. It doesn't matter. It just helps us remember what's being passed in. Okay, which takes another vector as a parameter. And it should return a new vector that has the sum or difference of the two. Okay, so there's a calculation that's going to be happening there, right? This dot draw function console log draw. So I mean, I think that's valid. I haven't done it that way before. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else can. Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I think it's just a different way to declare it. Because it's still essentially you can still reference it in the same way, right? You could still say it's like arrow functions. It's like arrow functions versus standard function declarations. Oh, okay. I didn't remember that, Rascal. So it's less performant as there's a new function created for each instance object versus, okay, so okay. I see, that makes sense. So it's attaching it, it's recreating it every time you create a new object. So every time you say new thing, it would create a new instance of the function. Whereas with this declaration style that we're doing here, it attaches it to the prototype, so it's only created once. That makes sense. Nice. Yeah, I'd forgotten that. Thanks for reminding. Okay, so we'll fill in the logic into our methods in here in just a minute, but let's do the last little part here too. The last thing we need to do is also add a getter property of length to the prototype that does stuff. So to add a getter, we just simply need to add the get keyword in front of it. So we'll just add get length. And so now we essentially have the basic skeleton for our entire class. Okay, so let's think. So we have the basic skeleton for our entire class. Now we just need to add in the actual logic into our, hey, Taco Dog, welcome. Good to meet you. Thanks for the follow. So yeah, now we'll just add the logic into our methods. So what do we need these methods to do? All right, so our plus should have the sum of the two vectors x and y values. All right, so and then they should return a new vector. So this is the challenging part, is that we're supposed to take in, so we start with a vector, we take in another vector, we add them together or subtract them, whatever, and then we're supposed to return another instance of a new vector. So we have to perform a method on these two vectors. We have to create two new vectors, run them through our method, and then run them back out through the constructor before we return them to the user. That's essentially what this is asking for. And because if we look at the output down here, so the output's down here, and we can see that output is formatted as an object. And it's formatted as a vector object, like what we've just been tasked with creating. So that's the crazy part to think about. So we're going to assume that we're getting passed in a vector that's gone through the constructor, and then a second vector that's gone through the constructor. And we need to let's start with the x values. We need to take the x values from both vectors and add them together. So I'm going to create a variable called add x. We could do this all in one, but we're going to take it slow. Add x. And if I want to reference the x value from the vector that we're currently working with, so the vector that's just gone through the constructor, how would I reference that x value? The x value of the object that we're currently working with. This dot x, yeah. So we're going to start with this dot x, and then we're going to assume that we're being passed in another vector into the method called vector2. So how would I reference the vector2 x value? Yeah. Yep, and Skim Puff got it as well. Yeah. Yep, so that's going to take the vector that we're working with plus the vector that gets passed in, and it's going to add those two x values together. Vector2 dot x. And since the second vector that we are, well, so that's a good question. So since the vector2 that's being passed in, we know for a fact that it's also gone through our same constructor. So if we look down here, what they're actually going to be passing in down here in the console log, we can see that we start with new vec12, and then what gets passed into our plus method as vector2 is something that's also going through our same constructor, new vec23. So we already know it's going to have the x property. We know that they're both going through our vector constructor that we just built. And so we know it will have that x property as well. And so we can do the same thing for our y values as well. So we'll say, because, and also too, for our constructor to work, it requires two parameters. Yeah, and you could do has own property as well. But from this, we can just kind of discern, from what we're being given here, we can discern that they're both going through the same constructor, which we just set up, which does have the x property. Yeah. So we'll do the same thing for y as well. We'll call add y, and we can do pretty much exactly the same thing. Oh, no problem, Athena. Yeah, there's JavaScript is its own beast, right? A lot of languages require a lot of very specific declarations of what variables are for and what properties they have, and and a lot of languages are much more strict than JavaScript is, and so you're kind of wild westing it out here with JavaScript, right? JavaScript don't care. JavaScript will try to coerce that type as far as it can, right? Okay, so we've got our variables, and we've created essentially the sum of the x values and the sum of the y values. Now, what is it asking us to return? So it's asking us to return a new vector that has the sum of the two vectors. We did that, x and y values. So return a new vector. Now, how would I do that then? So I can't just return x and y because it specifically wants a new vector returned. So how would I do that? This is where it gets a little like mind freaky. So I'm going to return something, right? Return a construct. Yeah. So essentially, that's what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to run our output back through the constructor again. We're going to need to return our out. We're going to need to run our output back through the constructor so that we can create another vector. Wild, huh? And we'll console log this and to show you that the output that we're going to get is matching what they want. So return new vec, and then I'm passing in my two parameters, which are add x and add y. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, oh, okay, go into the constructor, assign the properties to a new vector object. Yeah. Okay, so let's just test that part. So we're just gonna test this first console log here. And let's watch the format on this and to see what this looks like. All right, save it. I always forget to save before I do the run. So, all right, there. So look at that. See how it's explicitly labeled? It's explicitly labeled as a new vector. So that's what we created. And has the x property value of 3 and the y property value of 5, which is what we wanted, right? Now, sure, math, that's totally fine. Let's test that. Let's see what happens if we just say return. That's that's what we like to do on this stream. We like to mess around, tweak stuff. Sometimes the best way to figure out why something works or what the right method is just by trying and throwing different stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? So you said return add x add y. Yeah, so return add x. Oh, and I'm going to need to comment out my other return statement. It's not going to like it if I don't. All right, there we go. Return add x add y. Let's do that. Yeah, so actually in that case, it worked. So we didn't need to do the second vector object, right? No, I didn't save it. I was like, why did that work? It's like, that shouldn't work because I didn't save it. Hang on. I'm going to clear the console. It's like that. I wasn't expecting that. I forget to save a lot. Yeah. Okay. So that's more of what I expected. Engagement. Yeah. It's all on purpose, right? I never make actual mistakes. I'm always just testing you guys. Yeah. Wink, wink. First try. Nice. Very good. Yeah. Yeah, so this is more what I was expecting. So you can see instead of actually returning a vector object, it returns sort of just an anonymous object with the add x and add y properties. Yeah. So not exactly wrong. It's still doing what we wanted, but it's not returning a specific vector object. Yeah. Good question, though. Okay. Put this back. Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to try stuff. Within reason. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is essentially the minus. And so minus is really going to behave the same as plus. So I'm not going to belabor this point too much. I'm just going to kind of grab this and copy paste. Why type a lot of words when few words do trick? Happy to try stuff. I said within reason, rascal. Come on. Within reason. I did do a 4Q. I was pretty proud of that. Even though I kind of cheesed it. But yeah, I think 1Qs are a little beyond me for the moment, at least. Okay, so instead of adding, we're just going to change these to minus. And yeah, we should be able to call, still call a new vector. Yeah, that's a really good question. No aim boogie. How do you run the program in VS Code? Yeah, so this is actually an extension. It's called Code Runner. And I think there's probably more than one extension that could do this, but I'm just using Code Runner. And you can just install it from the VS Code extension library. So if you click over here under extensions, you can just search for Code Runner and install it there. However, in order for it to actually work, you're going to need Node. You're going to need Node.js installed on your machine, which isn't hard. And we're going to need to install it anyway. If you're part of the 100 devs cohort, we're going to need Node.js installed anyway. So, I mean, might as well install it now. Just go through just follow the steps. It pretty much installs itself. And then install the extension and it should work. So yeah, if you try to run it and you get an error saying something about Node something or other is not found, or like not a command, then just download Node from the internet, install it, and the extension should work after that. Yeah. All right. So should we return an absolute val? Hey, Born Code, welcome. We're still on the first problem, so you didn't miss too much. We're going through, we're building a class and doing some methods on it. Math people, if there's any geometry folks in the house, as far as this calculation, I mean, this, I'll little spoiler alert, this does pass the test cases that they gave us, that the text gave us. However, geometry peeps, if I need to return an absolute value, we can. Just let me know, geometry experts, because I'm not one. I passed the test cases and I'm moving on. But let me know. We can always modify this. All right. So we have our plus, we have our minus. So let's test our minus real quick. I don't expect this not to work, but we'll test it. No, okay. Thanks, Mathino. Oh, I guess, yeah, your name even has math in it. So thank you for coming to my rescue. All right, so let's test the minus. So we can see here we're passing in a new vector, 1, 2, minus a new vector of 2, 3. And we expect to get -1, -1. So we'll clear it, clear the console, save, and run. Hey, -1, -1 inside a vector object. We got it. Taco dog. No one comes to you for taco advice. Oh, I'm so sorry. What? Well, taco dog. What's your favorite kind of taco? I feel like if you have it in your name, yeah, you should be able to answer some taco related questions. Yeah, so this seemed to work as expected. It returned the right type of object. So we're good there, I think. Peachy. And then we also need to fill out our length, our getter here, our length object. And what is that? What are we supposed to do here? So add a getter property length to the prototype that computes the length of the vector. That is the distance of the point of x, y from the origin 0, 0. So essentially what that's saying is we're being given a point somewhere on a standard graph, like on a mathematical graph, and we're supposed to determine the distance of the point from the origin 0, 0, which is by default the center of our graph. So it's going to be on some kind of a diagonal extending outward from the center of the graph. And so if I want to find the distance of a diagonal, essentially, and I'm given a point, an xy value point, essentially what I'm being given is the right angle distance, right, from the center to the point. So yeah, Linda BRF is ahead of me there. The hypotenuse, exactly. So what is the so how do we find the distance of a hypotenuse of a triangle? Y'all are funny. So how do we find? Let's remember, dig back in your brains back to elementary or junior high geometry. How do we find that? How do we find the distance of the slanty part of a triangle, of a right triangle? Yeah, yeah. What's that called? You Google how to do it and read the first result. Yeah, I mean in real life. Yeah. Pythagoras. Yeah, Lance Maker coming in hot. Good job. Yeah. Pythagoras. Yes, the Pythagorean Theorem. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think it just takes nobody know because nobody knows how to spell. Like it's impossible to spell Pythagorean without looking. So, that just yeah, that's the hard part. The harder than actually memorizing a squared plus b squared equals c squared is remembering how to spell Pythagorean dang it, Pythagorean theorem. Yeah. All right. So anyway, that's how we do it. Oh, in Brazilian, you just write Pythagoras. Okay, cool. But hey, I got you. I got what you. I totally got what you're telling me there. All right, so we're gonna need to return something, and we're gonna need to return essentially. So Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? So in this case, we're trying to find c, which is the length of the side. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. How do I just find c? I need the square root of a squared plus b squared, right? Okay, so what do I do? What's my JavaScript? What do I write in JavaScript to find the square root of something? Yeah, square root of a squared plus b squared. But how do I write that? How do I find a square root of something in JavaScript? Yeah, math.square root. Getting some interesting math facts here from Math Dino. Yeah. Okay, so in this case, then we're just going to take the square root of, and in this case, remember too, in this case, we're not being passed anything extra. So we're just performing the operation on the vector that we're currently working with, the vector that went through our constructor. So in this case, we're just going to say this dot x and then squit, squirt. I know it always looks like squirt to me. Yep, yep, squish, or like math dot squish. Yeah. Yep. So in this case, then we can do this. So we could do math.pow to get the square of something. Or to me, anyway, it's quicker to write just star star 2. That squares it. And then plus this dot y. Off there. Come on. There. This dot y star star 2, which again squares it for us. So yeah, and I think that would work, doing a star star 0.5. Yeah. In this case, though, we want to square. We're trying to square root multiple items, so I think it's a little faster actually to use math.square root in this case and just put parentheses around everything we want to take the square root of. But yeah, that's I think what you suggested there is valid. Yeah, so that's gonna all that really not too crazy, right? So let's test it out. And we see that the result here should be 5. So let's see if that's what we get. Clear the console. Okay. Oh, I didn't save it again. I'll do that a lot, as you'll find. There. All right. So answer is 5. We got it. Awesome. Go us. I'm just going to make this window a little bigger. There. Okay. So right answer. Cool. I think we did everything the problem was asking us for. We did our prototype. We did our classes. We did our class with our methods and properties, and we got our length, and we passed all the tests. So I think we're done with this one. So in that case, so MDude, I'm not too familiar with getters as of yet, but I think, and somebody do please correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't getters and setters kind of like private? Like they aren't necessarily they're like behind the scenes type of methods where we're not necessarily passing anything from the outside. They just work using existing using properties that already exist within the function. They're not private. Okay. Yeah, like I say, I don't really understand them yet. We haven't actually covered them in class yet. So yeah, I can't necessarily speak to how they work yet. But anybody else that does know is welcome to fill in the blanks here. I'm at the point, like, a lot of this stuff is, you don't have to understand it right away to start using it, which is, how I approach things a lot of the time. Is I'll just be like, oh, hey, here's a new thing. I'm going to throw stuff at it and see how it works. And yeah, so that's the thing. It looks like they're, getters and setters are methods for accessing private properties, which Cranberry mentioned, which is what I thought they were. But it seems like there's some disagreement, maybe even just within the general JavaScript community, which it seems like in JavaScript, there's a lot of disagreement about how to do things or what's good or what's not good, right? So I just take stuff and I just start using it. So they're methods for accessing private property. That's a good distinction. They're methods for accessing private properties, which are, things that aren't coming in from the outside, but they themselves are not private. Okay, good distinction. Thank you for that, Cranberry. Yeah. But just because we don't understand it perfectly doesn't mean that we can't use it, right? So that's the cool thing. Just start messing with stuff. And Snarfin, really, I'm only using it because we were told to. It explicitly said add a getter property. So I was like, all right, telling me to use a getter, I'm going to add a getter. Yeah, and so in this case too, the difference here is also because it's used for accessing private properties, so things that we're not passing in. You can see here that when we call it from outside, there is no parenthesis. There's no this thingy, right? We just say dot length. We don't say dot length parenthesis because there's nothing to pass in because it accesses private properties. Yeah. I don't know. I think Leon's going to talk a little bit more about it on Tuesday, so we'll probably get a better understanding then. Let's call it Gator. Yeah, we can call it. Yeah, that's fine. We can call it Gators. I think this is the only time we'll need to use one for these exercises. Yeah, so it doesn't take any arguments. We can't pass anything into it. If you summon Gator, if you say Gator 3 times, you'll summon Florida Man. Oh no. Yeah, I got what you're saying, Mikey. Yeah, we don't pass in we can't pass in any arguments to it. Yeah. Okay, so in that case, we are done with this particular problem. So let's go ahead and commit it and push it up to our repo, which we already set up earlier. If you just joined us, we already set up the repo, and we've linked our local folder to the repo, to our GitHub repo. So let's do a commit and a push. All right. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to do a git commit and I know there's, you can streamline this a little bit. Oh, sorry, I need to do a git add first. I'm sorry. So we're going to do a git add. And in this case, I'm going to show you guys, if you aren't aware, I'm going to show you guys just how to add just one file. I know we normally do git add plus, which adds all the files at once. But in some cases, you might only want to add one file at a time. For example, like I haven't done any work on the other problems yet, so I don't necessarily want to add all my files if 3 of them are empty. I mean, not that it really matters, but just for illustration purposes. So you can add a single file at a time by just saying problem1.js, and you can add it that way. So that just adds the single file that we just did. And also another hypothetical reason that you may want to add one file at a time is if you are hypothetically chasing those green squares and maybe you missed a day of pushing your code wars up to GitHub, and you might want to hypothetically backdate some code wars to make your green square grid look nice and uniform. So that's another thing you can do if you want to backdate stuff. You can also add one file at a time and backdate it. And I can, if you guys are interested in that, I can show you. I think Rufio did a great, my fellow stream team member, hello, it's Rufio, did a great stream on that. But I'm happy to show you how to do that as well. So we've added that. We'll do a git commit. And we'll say finished problem. Hey, there we go. Yes, Linda, you can, absolutely. And real antacid, so that's definitely how antacid just shared how you can amend I believe an existing git commit post, but if you're doing a fresh commit, you don't need the amend statement there. So yeah, and so then the last thing we'll do is we'll just go ahead and push it up. Hey, so that's all we need to do. It's in our GitHub repo now, and it's there for us to access it whenever we want. So now when we navigate back here, we can see that little U next to our problem 1 is gone. So that means we've safely committed it, and it is synced up with our repo. All right. So any questions on problem 1 before we go to problem 2? We'll take a break here shortly at 7:30. Try to do it once an hour, if I remember. Sometimes I forget and yell, and nobody ever says anything, but I'd like to try to keep everybody healthy. Alrighty, so no questions. Next, let's do the next one. Mikey, there's a lot in this chapter, Mikey. I would say if you haven't started it yet, and you are planning to turn it in, I would say, take a crack at it as soon as you can. But I will say I'm probably going to read through this with fresh eyes after Tuesday's class, after we start covering more about getters and setters and that kind of thing, because some of it's just like, eye glaze, not able to quite comprehend it yet. So it's probably worth revisiting in a week or so. Yeah, Rascal, there's ways you can mass backdate commits as well. Yeah. Okay, so problem 2. So we're being asked something about groups. Yeah, so there's aside from like object or arrays, there's another data structure called sets. And if you've done enough code wars, you might have seen sets a couple times. So like an instance of map, a set holds a collection of values. Unlike map, it does not associate other values with those. It just tracks which values are part of the set. A value can be part of a set only once. Adding it again does not have any effect. So yeah, that's the critical part there. So a set is basically only carries unique instances of values. It kind of looks like it's just an object that just has only unique instances of values. Hey, Constantly Const, welcome. All right, so we're being asked to write a class called group. And essentially, we're being asked to mimic the behavior of a set. So like set, it should have add, delete, and has methods. Its constructor creates an empty group. Add adds a value to the group, but only if it isn't already a member, which makes sense given the rules. Delete removes the argument from the group if it was a member. And has returns a Boolean value indicating whether its argument is a member of the group. Okay, so let's stop there for now. We're going to do the whole thing, but we got to, there's a lot. This is a lot. So we got to break it apart, right? Okay, so the first paragraph is really just telling us what a set is. So we can kind of ignore that. But let's go down to what we're being asked here. We'll start with this. Oops. All right, write a class called group. Okay. Like set, it should have add, delete, and has methods. Okay. And its constructor creates an empty group. Okay. Add adds a value to the group, but only if it isn't already a member. Delete removes the argument from the group, and has returns a Boolean value. Okay, so we've kind of been given like 6 tasks here, right? So let's do it. So we already know how to declare a class. It's the easiest part. It's supposed to be called group. Cool, beans. All right, and we're going to skip the second one for a second. We're going to do the constructor first. So constructor. And let's look at let's see what we're being passed in here. I'm not entirely sure. So we'll look down at what the test cases are down here. So what are we being given? So okay, group.from. So it's going to be passing in. Well, it's not. It looks like everything that's being passed in is being passed directly to the methods. So in this case, our constructor isn't going to have anything. It's not going to take any parameters, because if we look at the test cases here, each of the items that are being passed in through a method. So nothing to take in here on a constructor. Yeah, Zena, there's a few code wars with this exercise. Yeah, exactly. Yep, that has to do with sets. So if you know about sets, it can make solving them a lot easier. Yeah, symbol also does not accept duplicates. Yeah. Yeah, symbols don't actually contain anything. They store no data at all aside from their name. Yeah. We're going to actually touch on symbols here in a little bit. I think it's the next problem. Yeah, thanks for dropping that knowledge there, Rascal. Okay, so constructor. All right, so they said that our constructor should create an empty group. So in this case, our constructor, we're just going to create an empty group, a property called this.group, and we can use an array here, or an object. I think I'm just going to use an array because arrays are maybe a little more familiar to work with, and it didn't specify. So in this case, I'm going to use an array called group. So our constructor is set up. And we're expected to have add, which are going to take some parameters. We don't know. We'll have to take a look and see what those are. Add, delete. I'm going to minimize this for now. Add, delete, and has methods. Delete and has methods. Okay. So like set, it has add, delete, and has methods. We got our constructor. So add should add a value to the group, but only if it isn't already a member. Okay, so essentially, if we're treating our group like an array, we essentially want to check and see, is the value already in the array, and is if it isn't, then we should go ahead and add that value to our array. Okay, I think I'm missing. Make sure this chat's been going by a little fast here. I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. Rascal just dropping the knowledge like usual. Does the compiler just store each member of a set in separate locations? Like as separate variables? I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know where it actually puts them. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Good question, though. So for add, so how would we check? So remembering that our group is an array, how do we check and see if a value, if a certain value is inside of an array? What's the easiest way for us to do that? Does anybody know? Hey, yeah. Mikey 2K5 and Just a Peanut. Yeah. So there's actually a built-in method that we can use to check and see if a value, we can take a value and we can check it against the items in the array and see if it's in there. So yeah, index of would work as well. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use essentially array.includes. And we're going to assume that a value of some type is going to be passed into this method. So we'll go ahead and say, we can say this dot group, so dot includes. So that this array that we just set up here, we want to check and see if it includes a particular value. So that's how we check it. But essentially what we want is we want some kind of a logical statement here saying, hey, if the group includes the value, then do nothing. But if it doesn't include the value, then add that value to the group. Hey, New Horizons, welcome. Back in my day, all we had was index of, there was no includes. Yeah, I think includes is fairly new, isn't it? Yeah, you have to check against index -1 and all that. But in this case, we have this fancy dancy includes, which returns a Boolean, true or false. So in this case, what we can do to see if it's to essentially only perform an action if the value is not in the array, then we can just simply use our handy little bang here. And we can say if it's not in there, and we'll just put parentheses around this, and we'll just say if this dot group does not include the value, then how do I add something to the end of an array? Quick. Y'all should know this. How do I add something to an array? Quickest way to add an array element should be on the tip of everybody's tongue. Yeah, push it real good. Yep. So we can say this dot group dot push value. Yeah. And also too, since I don't, you might notice my syntax here is a little different. We don't need the brackets if it's just a one-liner like this. So I'm just omitting the brackets here for this particular if statement. That's a little Code Wars flair. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll finish the delete method and then we'll take a break. If that works for everyone. All right, so that's essentially the end of our little add method there. We'll go ahead and do delete. Can I please show my Git bash during break? Sure. I'm not quite sure what you need to see. But yeah, I mean, I can share it. Yeah. All right. So delete is going to be essentially what do they tell us for delete? So delete removes its argument from the group if it was a member. So obviously we're going to be passing in some sort of value, right? Passing in a value, and it should remove it from the group if it was a member. Okay. So essentially we're going to check again if this time we're going to say if this dot group dot includes with no not, right? Because we're legit checking to see if this group includes value. Then we're going to do some stuff. So if I want to remove an element from an array, but not necessarily from the start or the end. If I want to remove our value could be somewhere like in the middle. It could be the second element of 50 or the 25th element of 50. So how would I do that if I want to be able to extract an item from somewhere in the center of an array? How might I do that? Oh yeah, wordplay, no problem. Yeah, math, arrays in JS are variable length and mutable. Yeah, as far as I know. Um, yeah. Yep. So yes, you can. Yep. Yes. The answer is that we're going to go ahead and use splice in this case. So you can use. I think you could probably use. Yeah, I think splice is really the only option here, because essentially we're going to want to like take it. We're going to take an element out and then join the two halves, right? Yeah, Snarf, and my repo is private. I just wasn't quite sure what they wanted to see in Git Bash, if I was going to be able to show what they wanted. But yeah, it's my repo is private. Oh, I see. That was in response to JM. I got you. Yeah, you can make private repos, and that's what we've done in this case, because I don't want to share my homework answers with all you guys if you didn't sit through the stream. Okay, so yes, y'all were right. So in this case, we're going to do this dot group dot splice, and so we can see that our arguments here, that the things that we need to pass into splice are essentially the start, where we want to start in the array to perform the action, the number of item, and then the number of items to delete. So in this case, we know that that's second. So we're gonna have something here, and then we're gonna have a comma, and then we're gonna have one, right? But how do I know the location of the item that I want to delete? It needs to be an index. It needs to be an array index. So how do I locate the index of an item that I want to delete? Yeah, just a peanut was a little ahead of me there. Yeah. So as Rascal mentioned earlier, we do have this index of that we can use, which will essentially just grab. We could just say this dot group. We could have set this to a variable as well. Index of, but I didn't in this case. Index of value. So what this will do is it'll just say, hey, if there's things in the group, find the item we want to get rid of, and based on its index, locate it and delete it. Yeah. So that's all we need to do there. That should take care of it for us. And with that, let's go ahead and take a break. So we'll go ahead and save, and I'll do a commit. I'll just, so y'all can see how we're going to do it. I'll do a commit and I'll push. I know we're not done with this problem yet, but we'll just go ahead and do that anyway. So I got my Git Bash here. And we've already, just for reference, we've already created the repo and synced it. Like we've attached our local repo to our GitHub repo, so that connection is already there. So the actual commit is not going to be that crazy. Oh, thanks, Ryan. All right, so we're going to commit. So git commit. Oh, I need to git add first. Sorry. We're going to git add, and we're going to add just the one file, problem 2.js. Again, we could do git add all. In this case, I'm choosing not to. So that's added. It's staged now. It's ready to commit. So we can say git commit, and we can put our message here in the command line. So I'm just going to say started problem. That's committed to the local repository. No, we're going to do has after the break. We're going to finish the problem after the break. We're only about halfway through it. Wordplay. What do I need to do to make sure I'm getting those greens? Commit often. Yeah, that the more you commit, the more actions you perform, especially, and commits are probably the easiest. The more actions you perform, the more green you get. So then after that, we've done our git commit. We can do our git push, and we're pushed up. Yeah. Jam, as far as SSL keys and private things, I think Leon was going to cover that in a class coming up here. He was going to show us how to obscure or how to hide certain things like API keys and things we might not want to share publicly. Yeah. Okay, just making sure that I didn't miss anything. Yeah, and also in response to a different way we could have solved the problem as well. I do believe, yeah, you could also do a filter as well. Yeah, you could have filtered this. Yeah, I think, but yeah, like Rascal said, for just one item, I think I would, if I was doing multiples, if I was filtering like two arrays against each other, I would absolutely use, if I had a bunch of possibilities, I would probably use filter, but in this case, I'm just going to use splice. But again, it's a judgment call. There's no right or wrong way to do it, as Leon said earlier in office hours. That can sometimes be the hard part to get your head around. Is yeah, there's no right or wrong way. There's maybe ways that are more efficient, or ways that are maybe frowned upon, like by the popular assumption. But Jam, does it help what we just did here as far as the commit and the push? Okay, let's go ahead and take a break. And then I'll see you guys back here very shortly. We're gonna take 5 minutes, and then I'll see y'all back here, okay? Keep moving on forward. 5-minute timer. Good, okay. All right, I'll see you guys here in a few minutes. Also, too, feel free to ask if you have any questions. Feel free to ask them in the chat while I'm gone, and I'll scroll back through the chat when I sit back down. All right, folks, we got about 1 minute, so mosey your way on back. What's today's hydration? Today's hydration is the cheapest black tea that I could buy at the store. It was like $3 or $4 for like 100 bags, and I'm like, I am there. Give me the cheap stuff. Because I drink a lot of tea. Thanks, Jacochi. I'm glad that was worth a follow. All right, I'm stopping the timer with 13 seconds left. Go ahead and minimize this. Get back into it. Okay. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thoughts on iced tea? Well, I mean, I like iced tea, but really, I like unsweetened tea. I lived in the South for a while, and it was really hard to find unsweetened tea down there. Everything is sweet tea. If you ask for unsweetened, they would look at you funny. So, yeah. All right, webcam is back on. We are raring to go again. Okay, so let's keep going with this problem. So we've done our add. We've done our add method. We've done our delete method. Now let's do our has method. Get my notes pulled back up here. All right. So has is the next thing that we've been asked to do. And has is really just, so has returns a Boolean value indicating whether its argument is a member of the group. Now, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we should be able to do this pretty easily. We should be able to say return. Does anybody know what we want to say here? So what do we want to return? We've actually already done this in other parts of our problem so far. So if I want to just return a true or false, indicating whether the item that we pass into it, so the value, whether or not the value that we pass in is already a member of the group, what would I say? Yeah, exactly, Griffith. So we can just say, and Rascal, that's not a bad answer either. We could absolutely say index of. My dog is here. Hello. Yeah, this group includes. Yep. This group includes and value. Yes. Yep. Okay, so that's really all that's asking for. And we don't need to say like an if, we don't need to say anything like that, because by the nature of the includes method that we're calling here, it will return true or false based on what it finds out. So that's really all we need there. All right, but that's not the end of the problem. We just took the first part of the problem because we wanted to be able to break this out a little bit more easily. So we're not done. Of course not. Eloquent JavaScript is never going to be that easy. All right, so we did the first part of the problem. Now let's do the second part. So I'm going to grab these last two paragraphs here. And let's add some more. Let's keep going. All right. Dimitrov says, now you can replace line 16 with has value. Yeah, so it, yeah, I actually haven't used has before, but so potentially we could, I think, do you mean line 17 here? Would it be this dot group has value? Is that what we would say, Dimitrov? I'm not familiar with has, so, you know, do let me know. I don't remember has, but could we say like if this dot group has then? While you're thinking about that, we'll go on to the next part, but we can always go back and tweak this. Oh, yes. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I didn't get you at first. I was like, what is that? But yeah, no, absolutely. So we could say, yes, because since we just created this has method down here, we can actually call it up above. And let's do that. I like this. Let's do it. So we can say, instead of saying this.group.includes, we're kind of repeating ourselves, right? So we're saying down here, we're saying return this.group.includes. And up here, we're saying this.group.includes. So really what we could do is we could just call the method up here, right? We could say if this dot has value and call that method we just built. Yeah. And we can do the same thing here. So if this dot, oh, yeah, is it this dot, is it this dot group dot has, no, or is it, it's just this dot has, right? Yeah, it's just this dot has. So we can dry things out here a little bit. We'll test this later and make sure it works, but I think it should. Feel free to tell me if I make any mistakes. Llama, no, I don't think so. JavaScript is pretty flexible about where you put functions. Just in general, I mean, like I can declare functions way after I reference them. Yeah, and I know in some languages that does matter. Yeah. Yeah, because yep, and that's yeah. Thanks for confirming that, Rascal. So yeah, it'll be this dot has, because in this case, the this keyword is referencing the parent, which is group, the parent class, which is group, and that parent group is the one that has the method of has. I know this is kind of hard to wrap your head around, but you got to think about which parent that method belongs to. And in this case, the has method belongs to group. So those two belong together. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and we'll test that out later. That's cool. I'm glad you guys thought of that. That's rad. Because I was not being super dry. So, all right. So now we have our has method. So let's look at the second part of the problem. So use the, I'm gonna save this. Use the strict equals operator or something equivalent, such as index of, to determine whether two values are the same. Okay, yeah, and we did things a little different. We didn't use index of. We used just includes because we can. So we kind of did that. Give the class a static from method that takes an iterable object as an argument and creates a group that contains all the values produced by iterating over it. Oh, rascal. Yeah, too late, man. And I would prefer that, that you didn't ban that, just because I was kind of trying to explain what was happening there. But yeah, close call. All right, so let's read that again. Give the class a static method called from. That's what it's telling us to do. Give the class a static method called from that takes an iterable object as an argument. So some kind of like an array or a thing that you can perform a loop on, essentially, that you can iterate through, and creates a group. So create a new group that contains all the values produced by iterating over it. So essentially, what we want to do is we want to take in, let's say, like an array of something, and then make a set out of it. Essentially, we make a new group that only contains the unique values from that array or other object. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me one moment. My old dog is he wanders around sometimes. I need to go put him back in a room so he doesn't hurt himself. 1 second. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. His balance isn't very good, so I don't like him just wandering around, while I'm not able to see where he's going. So, Okay, meanwhile, my young dog is coming around the other side. Okay, so let's do it. All right. So they've asked us to create a static method, and we can do that using this static keyword. So static, and we're going to create a new method from, and we're going to pass in some kind of an iterable object. So that could be an array or something like that. In this case, I'm just going to call the parameter like object or obj. We could call it whatever we wanted though. It's whatever makes sense to you. All right, so here's our new method. It's called from. And essentially what we want to do is we want to create a new group, and we want to iterate through the array that we're passing in, or the iterable object that we're passing in. We want to loop through each item in the object and add it to create a unique set. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and declare a new group. I'm going to just say new. I'm just going to call it new group. Let new group equals, and then I'm going to construct a new group object. Now, why am I doing that? Because we've been explicitly told that we need to return a new group. So what I want to do is I want to essentially start this constructor building a group for us. Create that group object, create that new group object, and start, so that way we can start adding items to it. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm instantiating the new group, and then I'm going to loop through the object that we've passed in, and I'm going to say, well, it's kind of like what we did for the previous question, right? And we'll see how this is utilized here in a second. So I'm going to say for, and what's a way that I can, what's a way that I can loop through an object? There's several different ways we can do this. What's a possible way that I could loop through an object? Kind of a shorthand for loop, rather than saying for let I equal 0, blah, 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 blah. Good guesses. Yeah. So actually, I'm going to go with what Skimpuff said there. Instead of assuming that the item that I'm going to get is going to be explicitly an array, so for each, I'm going to use, I'm going to do for let, for var item in items. For, let's see, I'm going to say for let item in object. Yeah, that should be it. So that's going to loop over each of the properties or whatever, or the items in the object, right? That's being passed in. And then now what we want to do is for each of those items, we want to check them to see if they should be added to the group or not. And essentially, we already have a method that can do that for us, right? We already have them. So what can I do to determine whether or not the item should be added and perform that action? What would I say here in the body of my for statement, of my for loop? Yeah, we're going to use the add method. Yeah, we're going to use the add method, exactly. So we're going to say new group dot add item. And that'll essentially pass the item into the method that we already created, see if it's viable to be added, and if it is, then go ahead and add it to the group. And then at the end, the very last thing that I need to do is just return the group that I created. Okay, so that was a lot. But let's go down here and we'll see how this is potentially going to be called. We'll test each of these things that we've built. So in the end, what they want to do here is the very first thing they're going to do is they're calling that static method that we just created. They're calling that group from, and they're passing in and they're passing in an array. So essentially what this needs to do is be able to take in that array directly into the add method, directly into the from method that we just created, and then return a valid group. I believe that's what they wanted us to do. Yeah. Give the class a static from method that takes an iterable object as an argument, so like such as an array, whatever, and then creates a group that contains all the values produced by iterating over it. So that's why we had to declare this group inside of our static method, because they specifically told us that what they want back is a group. So it needs to go through the constructor, create a group, and start adding things to it. All right, so I'm gonna add a little something here. We're just gonna console log the group before we do anything else to it. I just want to console log this variable and see what we got back before we start trying to perform operations on it. We're just gonna make sure we got back the right thing. Okay, saved. We did a lot here, so I probably screwed up at some point. So let's see what we get back. Because we had to finish the static method before we could even test anything. Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's try it. Okay, so I'm missing something because it didn't give me any errors, but it also didn't give me any results. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so no errors, but no results. So I'm probably missing return somewhere or something like that. So let's do this. We're going to add a console log in here. This will see if it's even, we're going to go ahead and console log new group just to see if it's iterating through and adding things. It's probably not. Oh, okay. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's for of. Yeah. That should do it. Yeah. It's giving me the I was like, it's giving me indexes here. It's giving me keys. And yeah, like why is that? So yeah. Yep. So in this case we want to let item of. Yeah. Good catch. There we go. Okay, and this is nice because I had it, we're still having it log at each step, so that makes it very clear what's happening. So yeah, in this case, it looks like it's performing the way we expect. It's giving us, it's creating a group that iterates over the thing that we passed in, and then specifically returns this group object that we wanted, right? The set with the group property and 10 and 20. Oh, hey, no, you're totally fine, Joe Romofo. No problem at all. And let's make sure that let's see. So we're console logging the group. Yep. And then the next thing we'll do is we're going to check and see whether our has method is working properly. But I also want to check another thing too. We're going to modify this test case a little bit because the whole point of us making a group, right, is that it needs to be a group of mutually exclusive items, right? So let's see what happens if we try to pass in 10, 20, 20, 30, 30. So what we'd expect to get back is 10, 20, and 30, right? So this will tell us whether our code is actually working. I don't know why the test case doesn't actually really test that the code is working properly, but we're going to test this anyway. Okay. Yeah, cranberry, and that's actually what I thought at first too. But no, it just says, and I struggled with that for a long time. I struggled with that for like a couple hours, trying to get it to do that. But no, what it actually wants is only a group that can. So it's essentially it's just creating a set. So if we pass something into it like this, what we should get back is 10, 20, and 30. All it wants is take something in, return a set of the unique values. That's all it wants. I thought the same thing though, Cranberry. I thought the same thing too, Cranberry, though. Just the way it's written is really weird. Yeah. All right. So check out what we get back, right? We get back a group with just 10, 20, and 30, which basically it's a set. So it's working as expected. Perfect. All right. Now let's actually do the test cases here. Yeah, don't feel bad for reading it that way, Cranberry, because I certainly did it first and I was super confused. And then I was like, oh wait, it's supposed to be a set. Yeah. All right. So here we expect that our console log should return true. So we'll test that. Clear the console here. Save. Oh, I have a console log up here too, still. Sorry. All right. Save again. Clear the console. Do it again. Hey, there we go. We got true because the group does have 10. The next thing we're going to check and see, does the group have 30? So in the original test case, the group only contained 10 and 20. So we'll go back to the original test case here so that we get the expected result. So in this case, if we pass in a group of 10 and 20, we should expect that the return is going to be false on this particular console log. Okay, save and run. False, perfect, yep. So our has method is working as expected. Excellent. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to console log. So we're gonna add 10. And actually, I'm going to add some console logs here as well. So we're going to do an add, then we're going to do a delete. I'm going to console log the group again. Just adding some extra flavor here. Add console log, delete console log, and then we're going to test our has method one more time. And the end result there should be false. So see if everything is working as expected. Yes, so what we did, so we got our group. We did group.add, but it didn't actually add anything, right? Because 10 was already in the group, so no problem there. However, our delete did delete it because 10 was in the group, so stripped it right out. And then the last thing we did was check to see whether the group had 10 in it, and it returned false as expected. So it seems that all of our group methods are working the way we would hope they would, which is great. Hooray, go us. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. Any questions on this? This was a lot. This was quite a meaty question, and the next question is going to be even meatier. So this next question actually builds on what we've just done here. So before we go too much farther, I just want to check in with y'all. Woo! Yeah. Oh, hey, Skittle. Actually, this is homework that's due on Tuesday. I'm not doing the wrong chapter, am I? You're freaking me out. This is the homework that's due Tuesday, right? Okay. Freaked me out there. Yes, yeah, hey, Skittle. So this is actually a homework that's due with the current class this Tuesday. So you might be working ahead there a little, Skittle. But hey, I love the catch-up crew. Y'all are great. Oh, JSY06. Yeah. So this is Eloquent JavaScript. So you might prefer, you would probably prefer JSY06 because yeah, JSY is much more palatable in general. So, Jerkid, yeah, we can look at the last. So by the last part, I assume you mean this last from here. Yeah, no wonder you're lost. Yeah, oh my gosh, Skittle. Yeah, get yourself some JSY. You'll feel so much better. Good try though. Fair play for showing up. Yeah. So I assume, yeah, Jay, I assume you want to look at this last static from method here. So okay, so yeah, what are we doing here? So essentially, what they wanted to do with this static method is take in an array or some iterable object, and essentially, in layman's terms, take an array and make a set out of it. Make a group of unique values out of whatever we pass in. So just take it and make a group of unique values out of it. And so what we did there is the first thing we did was we said, all right, they want a group return. This should return a group. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to instantiate a new group, and then start adding items to it. So the first thing we did here is we created a new group, and then we loop through the array that we're going to be passed in. Whatever, just loop through the items in the array, and then determine whether or not it's valid to add that particular item to our group. And we already have a method that can do that because we wrote that method earlier. We wrote this add method that says, hey, check and see if a value is already in the group. And if it is, ignore it. If it's not, add it to the group because it's going to be a new unique item. So we just loop through the array that we're passing in, add the items, and then in the end, return the result, return the set of unique values. Okay. Just switch your inside voice to Bill Nye when reading Eloquent JavaScript and it falls into place. Yeah. Unfortunately, you wouldn't want to hear me try to do an English accent, so I'm sorry. I assume you mean Bill Nighy, not Bill Nye, but either one would be fine. Wordplay. What do you need to see? Are you in the right? Are you seeing everything you need to see here? yeah. Carses. There's Bill Nighy and Bill Nye. So I wasn't quite sure which one you meant. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and commit and push this. Yeah, and so really they named it group in this case because the set keyword, like the set keyword, already exists, which a set is a set of unique values that originate from an object, and so it's like they denote unique values. Yeah, exactly, Rascal. Set was already taken. Yep. And so they kind of just say write a class called group since set is already taken. It's just what they decided they needed to call it. So yeah. All right, let's commit and push this. Got to get them squares. Get your squares. Just commit all the time. Just always ABC. Always be committing. Yep. All right. So we're gonna do a git add. Problem2.js. And again, I know I can do git add dot. We're just practicing here. We're practicing adding individual files. Problem2.js. Oops. All right, and we're gonna git commit -m finished problem. Okay, cool, and git push. Bam, all good there. Okay, and now we can see that our little that yellow has gone away, and that our problem is showing that it's fully synced. Oh, hey, Butter, welcome. Yeah, so we're part of kind of an agency that's teaching people to learn to code called 100 Devs. You're welcome to join. They're taking folks at any time. Especially, there's a group called the Catch Up Crew, which is full of people who are just starting to code, and all learning together. So if somebody could link the Discord, that'd be rad. Yeah, we're learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, MERN stack stuff. ABC is also good relationship advice. But yeah, as far as the answer to your specific question there, do I need a hey, welcome Romero Caesar. Should I need a JSON package to use SCSS? Oh, okay, package.json. Yeah, all right. So don't know if there's a way to use SCSS without package.json. Sure there is, though. Thanks, Rascal. Yeah. If you're just getting started, feel free to join our Discord. It's a super active community, lots of fun. And I can link the Discord here. Actually, I can link you. Oh, I don't have I don't have the bot set up, so I have I have my viewers to be my bots, and it looks like Ikeji's just linked it there. My viewers are my bots. Hey, you all might be bots. I have no way to know, right? You could be highly sentient, like Skynet level bots. Sure, JM. Thanks for coming. Okay, let's move on to problem 3, which is actually a continuation of problem 2. So more, whether you wanted it or not. Turing test now. I'll spare you for now. You're still of use to me. It's a simulation. I know. Well, that's the thing. When you're working, so I work from home full time, right? And my team, like, we don't ever see each other in person. It's just not a thing. We don't even turn our cameras on when we're on meetings. None of us. It's just it's a team decision. None of us turn our cameras on. We all just, it's by mutual decision. We all just go without cameras, and I spend most of my day, talking to my team members on Teams, Microsoft Teams, and then I come on to Discord and I talk with everybody. No visuals there, and then I come here and I stream and I talk into the void and I hear back from everybody in chat. But so I have no way, like, I feel like I'm in. It's a simulation. I don't know. Maybe nobody's real. Who knows? Either way, I'm having fun, so I don't really care. But it's one of those things. So I don't really see. I don't see anybody that I work with in person. It's kind of wild. Han asks, can I get a job without really understanding inheritance and polymorphism, not clicking in my head? Well, I have a job and I don't understand it, so I think you're okay. Yeah, no, and that's true. Yeah, right. Leon is going to be going over that, so don't stress yourself about it. We've only had one class on like this kind of stuff so far, so don't freak. Don't freak. You just write it out, kind of just play with it. Maybe keep rereading the concepts, and Leon's going to touch on it again here in the next class. Okay, let's get started on the next problem. I don't think we're going to be able to finish it before the next break, but we're gonna dig in. So, problem 3: iterable groups. So by iterable, that means loopable, right? You can loop through it and do stuff to it. So iterable groups: make the group class from the previous exercise iterable. Refer to the section about the Iterator interface earlier in the chapter if you aren't clear on the exact form of the interface anymore. Yeah, I definitely had to refer to it. That's why it's called oops. Yeah, absolutely. All right, if you used an array to represent the group's members, which we did, don't just return the iterator called by calling the symbol.iterator method on the array. That would work, but defeats the purpose of the exercise. Okay, fine. It is okay if your iterator behaves strangely when the group is modified during iteration. Okay. So in the end, here's what they're going to want to do. So I read this and I was, come on. So I originally read this question and I was like, what the flip? Because yeah, there's a lot here. 2 seconds, I need to sneeze. I'm going to mute for just a second. It went away. I hate that. It's going to come back. You know it is. Okay. Oh boy. Lost it. Yeah. Okay. So let's think about what's even happening here. All right. So make the group class from the previous exercise iterable. Okay. So in the end, what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to say, essentially, they're going to want to call a loop. on a group that we're making. So, and they're going to call that, so they're going to pass in a group. And so essentially in this case, they're going to pass in an array to that static from method that we created before. And they want to be able to then to generate the group and then loop through the group and then log each value in the group. Okay. So essentially what I had to do here is I didn't understand what was happening. Cranberry busting out the matrix quotes. Yes. Top notch. All right. So essentially what I had to do on this one is I literally had to just scroll back up and be like, okay. It said, refer to the section about the iterator interface if you're not clear on the form of the interface. Okay. That's what I had to do because I didn't understand even what this was asking me. So we can go back up a little bit, and I just did a control F on, oops, the wrong window. I did a control F on iterator. Up farther. Yeah, okay. And then I found this. I said, okay, so here they gave us some code. They gave us some code that is supposed to allow an existing class to essentially do a prototype, do a prototype assignment on a class, right? And say and add additional functionality to an existing class. So I started with this, and it's we're gonna go ahead and copy our code. Because we know we're gonna need all the code from the previous problem. They told us that. We're gonna need to take the existing code and start doing more stuff to it. So we're gonna take this code. We're gonna start there. All right. And they gave us this little code snippet here to essentially say, hey, add this symbol.iterator function to our previous class that we already created. So let's start with this. We're kind of walking through my thought process, how I approach this. All right. So, and we know that our class isn't called matrix, it's called group. So group.prototype, which we know that whatever like class.prototype will attach an additional function or method or whatever to whatever to that class. It'll retroactively assign a new thing to that class. So group.prototype symbol.iterator, cool. And adding that as a function. However, return new matrix iterator this. Okay, so that's a class, right? Matrix iterator is clearly a class, just the way it's written, but we don't have any sort of class called matrix iterator, or in this case, we're going to call it group iterator. We don't have the actual class that's going to do the iteration. So we're going to need to write a new class here. Something called group iterator. Okay, fine. So if I scroll back up a little bit, I can see, oh yeah. So up here, they actually wrote a whole second class. That we are going to then call from inside of our original class to do that iteration operation. So, okay, fine. We're just going to copy this whole class. I'm just going to grab this whole thing, and we're going to modify it to meet our needs. Okay. And let's see. Shouldn't really matter where I put it. We're just going to put it here. We'll see. I don't remember if I have to do one first or the other first, but we'll see. If it gives me an error, that's fine. Okay. So we're going to have a class called group iterator. And this class is doing a few different things. In this case, it's taking a two-dimensional matrix, like a matrix with X and Y values, and it's doing some operations on it. Oh, thanks, Brown Lamb. Much appreciated. Thank you. And so we can kind of modify this to meet the needs of our current operation that we're doing. So in this case, we're not taking in a matrix. We're taking in just an array, a single line versus a full, 2D matrix. So we can kind of simplify this a little bit. So in this case, we're going to take in, let's see, what did I call that? We're going to take in an object of some kind. I just called it object. And what are we doing to it? So we're going to be building some kind of an object, and essentially what this is doing is it needs to return the result of, let's see, what did we call this? Trying to think of how best to explain this. So it needs to essentially return the same output that symbol iterator would return. And in this case, symbol iterator is a method that returns two things. It returns a value right here. It returns a value and a done condition. So whether or not, essentially whether or not we've looped through the entire object. So it returns the current value, and then whether or not we are done, whether or not the object is finished. That's what the next method of iterator returns. So we're gonna need essentially we're gonna need a couple methods in here. So we're gonna need a constructor. We're gonna need a next, which I think they told us it does need. We're gonna need a constructor, and we're gonna need a next. And I think was that it? Yeah. So return a constructor, have a next method, and that next method is going to need to spit out the current value as well as whether or not we're done looping. That's basically going to tell our loop when to stop. So I know this is like super confusing, but it's kind of hard to explain as well. It's very high concept stuff. But in this case, mostly what I did is I saw that there was a snippet of code further up in the text that could help me, and I just chopped it down until it gave me what I wanted. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so what do we actually need to pass in here? So in order to loop through anything, no matter what it is, we need to have our position. So we need an index of some kind. And then we need the actual object that we're looping through. And so think about anything that we loop through, whether it's a word or an array or an object. We need a position, and we need the object itself. So our constructor is essentially, that's what it's going to do. We're gonna have two things: this dot index and we're going to have the actual thing that we're looping through, whatever that is. In this case, it's going to be object.group. So because we know what's being passed in is a group of some kind that we are supposed to be looping through. So we have the position, we have the object itself. Okay, and then we're going to have our next method, and we know that next method needs to return these two things. It needs to return a value, and it needs to return a status, whether we're done looping or not. And because what the symbol iterator function is supposed to essentially give us is those two things. Okay. So let's figure out how to loop through it. Okay, so if we are done, if we've reached the end of an object, of whatever we're looping through, then essentially the index of our object should be equal to the length of the object itself, right? So we're done looping, the index rolls over and it equals the length, and we consider that we're done. So what we're going to say is if this dot index is equal to this dot group dot length, right? Because if the index rolls over and it's equal to the length of the object, there's nothing more to loop through. So in that case, we want to return the fact that we are done. And so I think in this case, yeah, so when, so we can see here that we're given a little template here. So and this is what I keyed off of. So inside of the next object, if the position, our index in this case, is equal to the end of whatever we're looping through, then return a value of done. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to return done as true. Okay. So that takes care of the first condition. But what if we're not done? Then if we're not done looping, then we need to figure out where we're at and the current value that we're sitting at. Oh, T-money. Yeah, so difference between double equals and triple equals. So double equals will still return true if, for example, I were to pass in the number 1 and a string of 1. It would still return true because it doesn't care about the type of what's being passed in. But the triple equals checks for both value and type. So it wouldn't say that a string of 1 and a number of 1 are equals. Yeah. Yep, exactly. All right, so if we're not done looping, then we need to return where we are currently at inside of the loop. So we're going to say let value equals. So if I want to get the value of a certain point in an array, using array notation, how might I do that? So if I want to if I'm looping through something, let's say just a standard loop, and I was like, and I had an I value, if I had an index value of I, how would I determine what value is at that point is at that index in the array? I hope my question is making sense. Just think back to just standard array notation. Like if I was doing a for loop against an array and I had an index value of I, and I wanted to get the value inside of the array. Yes, array I. Yes, you guys got it. I wasn't sure if my question was making sense, but you guys clearly got it. Okay, good. All right, so let's modify that notation to figure out how to reach into the current object that we're working on and get the current value. So my dog is here. If I wanted to reach in to the current object that I'm working on and pull out the current index, does anybody know how I might notate that here using that array I sort of template? We already have the two items that we need inside of our constructor. I'll give you that hint. That's why we pulled in those two specific items. Yeah, Skimpuff has got it. Skimpuff has got it. Skimpuff is on it. All right, so we're going to do this dot group, this dot index. So what does that look like? So whatever we pass in, maybe it's like a little array of like 10 and 20. So whatever we pass in, whatever that is, we're going to access the particular index that we're currently at and return the value. So if I'm at 0, if I pass in an array of 10 and 20 and I'm at index 0, then my value is going to be 10. And so what I'm going to return here would be like a value of 10 and then done false because we're not done looping yet. Yeah, and we'll console log this and we'll look and see what's actually being returned here. So essentially, yeah, what we're doing is we're just essentially building this symbol iterator function from scratch, and we're calling it group iterator. Yeah. All right. So I think this should do it. And actually, I'm gonna move this down. So all I'm doing here is I'm just moving the prototype assignment down to the bottom here because I think I need to. Okay. So we have all of our original code up here, which creates a new group. The next thing we do is we create an iterator, which essentially loops through, and for each value in the array, it returns the value itself, and then it returns whether or not we're done looping. And then what we're doing is we're assigning a new function inside of our group class called symbol iterator. And what it does is it returns a new instance of group iterator, which is essentially just the value and whether we're done. And then in the end, the very last thing we're doing is we are, what this will allow us to do is it will allow us to start looping through whatever we decide to pass into our group, into our group class here. So let's just run it. All right. Oh, I need to clear the console here. All right. Let's see. That seems to be running quite a lot. I might have missed something. Let's see if it prints anything. Oh, okay. I've got a lot of A's, so it's printing something. It's printing something. So I must have missed something. That's all right. There's a lot here. Oh, I know what I did. So essentially, we have a we're looping through an array, but I didn't actually increment it. So in this, we want to keep returning the value, but we also need to be looping through the array. And so I need to increment this .index. It's okay, Chanpo, this went right over your head. It went right over my head too. And I'll be strictly honest, I don't understand everything that's happening here. This is the result of me spending like a ridiculous amount of time just tweaking the code that was already in the text and making it work. I have a vague understanding of what this is doing, but this is one of those things. It's more of a conceptual exercise. This is not something you're going to have to do every day. It's just more about getting it done in this case. And so now this is going to iterate. So we fixed it now. All right. I apologize if you can hear my old dog whining. He's hungry. So we're going to take a break here in a minute. There we go. Okay, now it works. Yeah. Yeah, and so essentially what it's doing is it's going through whatever we pass in, whatever we feed into this. It's going through it. It's grabbing the values. It's saying whether or not it's done looping, and then it's logging those values. Yeah, but this is one of those where it's like you don't stress yourself too much trying to understand it right now. It's a wild question. Sometimes this kind of stuff is more about just like, how do I make it do the thing, right? You don't have to understand all of it. Just how do I make it do the thing that it's supposed to be doing? And how do I dig through? Because sometimes you're gonna be given, at work, you might be given code that makes very little sense, and you're just told make it work, or add something to this code to make it work. And so this is also an exercise in just tweaking it until it spits out the thing that you want, and using existing references like this. Like they gave us a reference here, right? It was already in the text. I had to scroll back through and find it, and then just keep pushing buttons until I made it do the thing that it was supposed to do. Yeah, piece of shoot. Yep. And we fixed that. That was my mistake the first time. It was printing out endless A's there for a little bit. I had an infinite loop. Forgot my iterator. You caught it. Yeah. So don't stress yourself too much about this one. I would say I understood question 2. This question lost me. But that's what Eloquent JavaScript likes to do. It likes to be very conceptual. Yeah, keep pushing buttons until it does the thing. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes that's just life. You don't have to understand everything. Sometimes you're just given a thing, and once you make it do the thing that it's supposed to do, then it's like, all right, I'm going to shelve this away. I'll come back to it later, and hopefully I'll understand it then. So, managing frustration, right? We aren't going to be able to understand everything all the time. Sometimes it just works. Just hope there's no magic smoke coming out. Okay. And I'm sure if I spent like 6 hours on this, I probably could understand it. But is it worth my time? No, probably not. So we'll move on. Now it works. Now I can ask myself why. Yeah, exactly. All right. We'll git add. And we'll take a break. I think we all deserve one at this point. All right. Git commit. I've been pressing my VCR button since 1996 and it still says 12 o'clock. Yeah, anybody remember trying to program the VCR? That was wild. Wild times. Back before, touch screens and intuitive interfaces. All right, git commit finished problem. This deserves an exclamation point, I think, on this one. All right, git push. Here we go. Yeah. Oh no, you messed up your Git repository. Oh dang. Yeah, and also too, Leon is planning on doing a big Git class, I believe next Sunday. So if you're still struggling, I believe the next Sunday is the Git Bowl, which is supposed to be the big Git class. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I think we're good there. So let's take 5 minutes. And then the last problem I will say is not nearly as intense. This was by far the hardest one in the set. The last problem is not nearly so bad. So I'll see you back in 5 and we'll just wrap it up. Hydrate. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, good point. It's actually Monday or some other day. I think Leon was going to look at his calendar. Thank you for reminding me of that. Sunday is Mother's Day. Call your mother, or at least here in the U.S. it is. And so, yeah, well, it probably won't be Sunday, but some other day in that vicinity. All right, let's get the timer going. Okay, start. And I'll see you back here in just a few minutes. I swear, the last problem is not nearly as bad. We're gonna knock it out of the park. See you in a minute. Okie doke, we got about 30 seconds left, so mosey on back and we'll wrap things up here. Mosey on back. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the timer. Minimize this. Okay. We'll get back into it here for the last question. Okay. Turn my webcam back on. Oh, and also too, I didn't want to forget, I have a new subscriber who subscribed to me between streams. So I did want to thank them on stream. Make sure they got recognition. 2 seconds. I'm going to find them. They're in here. Oops. Sage01. If you're watching, thank you so much for subscribing. They subscribed yesterday. Well, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Let's get into it. Last question. Promise it's not as bad. Let's go ahead and do it. Okay, I'm going to go back down here. Question 4. Okay. Yes. All right. Question 4. So, borrowing a method. Yes, yeah, well, yeah, we're learning about Mayan wolf promises, which with regards to time aren't necessarily always the truest promises in the world. End early, anyone? Yeah. All right, same as Leon. When I say end early, I don't usually mean it, but in this case, I truly think I do. Okay. All right, borrowing a method. Earlier in the chapter, they mentioned that an object's has own property can be used as a more robust alternative to the in operator when you want to ignore the prototype's properties. Okay, let's pause there for a second. So what has own property does is it can check inside of an object to see whether the object and only that object has the property. So it ignores the prototypes or any parents of any prototypical parents of that object and says, all right, just within this local object right here, does this local object have the particular property that we're looking for? So that's what has own property is for. But what if your map needs to include the word has own property? Of course, why? Yes, do that all the time, right? You won't be able to call that method anymore because the object's own property hides the method value. Okay, so can you think of a way to call has own property on an object that has its own property by that name? All right, so let's look at what they've given us here. All right, so they've given us an object, and that object is called map, and it has the values of 1, which is 2, true, which is true, and has own property, which is also true. And they're doing a call here. They're doing a has own property call on the object of map. And so let's see what it does right now before we change anything about it. Oh, and I'm going to clear the console as well. We'll run it again. Oh no, we got an error. Okay, what does it say? Map.hasOwnProperty is not a functionate object. Yeah, because our object already contains a property called hasOwnProperty. So we can't call this method on it, unfortunately. All right. So can you think of a way to call hasOwnProperty on an object that has its own property by that name? So on this one, I had to go to the hints. I was just like, okay, I don't know. what do I do? So you can't quite see that behind my webcam. I'm sorry. Here, let me move it over a little bit so you can see. There. So remember that methods that exist on plain objects come from object.prototype. Also remember that you can call a function with a specific this. So with a specific, you can call a function or a method that's attached to a specific parent or attached to a specific class or whatever. So you can remember, you can call a function with a specific this binding by using its call method. So they did give us earlier in the text, they gave us a specific method that could essentially take in a parent class or whatever, and then pass in a parameter to a specific function. So let's look a little bit farther up, and we'll see how that's applied. All right, let's scroll up a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to find some examples up here that are farther up in the text. Should have here. Now I'm going to search. This is too slow. I'm going to search for this. There we go. That'll do it. All right. A little farther. Not that one. Okay. Yeah. So up here in the text, they actually show us kind of how to use this. So you can use the function's call method, which takes the this value as its first argument and then treats further arguments as normal parameters. So in this case, what they have is they have a function called speak, okay? And it takes in a parameter called line. So the function is called speak, and it takes in the specific thing that you want the whatever to say. So it takes in the specific line to say. And then what they've done is they've declared two objects, one called white rabbit, the other called hungry rabbit. And both of them can access the speak method. So in this case, what they're doing is when they're calling, if you were to just call speak, it's not exactly clear explicitly which rabbit it should belong to, because both of them have access to the speak method or the speak function. So in this case, you can explicitly call the speak function on the hungry rabbit object by using call. So we say speak dot call that function on the hungry rabbit object, and pass in the parameter of burp. So in that case, what you get out of that is the hungry rabbit says burp because we called it on hungry rabbit. Okay. So in this case, they specifically told us to use call here in order to explicitly call it on exactly essentially exactly the object that we wanted. So that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up another console log. And what do we want to do? So what's the method that we're calling here? What is in this original console log? What's the method that's being called? Yeah. We're calling the method or the function that we want to call is has own property. Okay, so that's where we start with this. Has own property. Okay, good start. And then we say has own property dot call. Okay, and what is the object that we want to call the method on? What object are we targeting here? Yeah. HG joke coming in hot with the right answer. Good job. Yeah. We're calling it on map. Exactly. Okay. And what is the what's the so thinking about just backing up and thinking about the has own property method, what is the parameter that we want to pass in to has own property? You can reference the original console log to see what argument do we want to pass in to has own property? What are we checking? Yeah. Yeah. We're checking one and seeing what we get back. Exactly. One. Okay. And we're console logging that. And so what we expect to get back then, and I think I accidentally deleted it, what we expect to get back is a value of true. So if we say what we expect is true, save that, and we'll clear the console. We'll see if that's what we get. Because before, remember, we got an error. But now, oh, we still got an error. Hang on, did I forget something? Is in property. Oh, because I still have the original. I didn't comment out the original console log. That's why. Whoops. All right. And again, round two. First try, indeed, right? Yeah, take out the first. Yeah, yeah. Yep. So we got our true there. Yeah. And honestly, without the hint, I probably couldn't have figured this one out. The hints are there to help, and in this case, it did help because it told me exactly what to do. So really, the challenge was just making sure that I implemented the call correctly. Yeah, it was one. I had to access the hint on really all of these, and there's no shame in that, right? Whatever you have to do to get it done. And in this case, I needed the hint because I didn't really even understand what the question was asking. Again, these are hard, but that's okay because we power through, right? We need the hints. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if anybody could do these without the hints. I would be immensely impressed. But also, too, another thing is a lot of these questions seem to touch on concepts that are very like theoretical, conceptual, getting into more of that high level stuff that Leon talked about. So not necessarily like the practical applications. We spend a lot of the classes, Leon's classes, really focusing on practical applications, on putting things in the DOM, on returning things to users, on building stuff, right? And this is Eloquent JavaScript seems to be the main time when we touch on more theoretical concepts, on more foundational building blocks, the nitty gritty behind the stuff that we just use because it works, right? And so it's just a slightly different way of looking things and reading things that we may not be totally used to. And so I think it's still good to do, even if we don't totally understand everything about it so far. And so I think Leon is just kind of giving us a taste of the kind of books that he was showing us on stream, the kind of books that he reads all the time, which are a lot of theory and a lot of, like more like college CS type courses, of which I am not familiar. So yeah, I think it's good to get a taste of this stuff. It's very, very dense. That's all right. We get through it, don't we? All right, let's commit this. Exactly. These examples are insights. That's a very good way to put it. These examples are insights into how the language functions internally, as to opposed to how we normally use the language. So this is the gears. This is the oily, nasty, innards of the language versus the shiny, applicable stuff that we're used to just using on the outside. Yep. Exactly. This is we're cracking up. We're under the hood and we're looking bemused and bewildered inside the engine bay of our car. Exactly. Yeah, under the hood. Literally. Yep. Still good to do. And I think these are the kind of things where it's like I read it now and I'm kind of like I understand maybe like a tenth of it, right? Or maybe more, but I don't know, a quarter maybe. And then we go through a few more lessons, and then you come back and you read it again, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm picking that up a little better now. Or you can just come back a week later and you read it again. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I feel that now. I get that. So you pick up, you gather more and more as you go. That's the healthy way to learn anything. Genius Garfield, that's an awesome name. I dig it. Some of y'all have such fun Twitch names. All right, let's do it. Git add problem3.js. And actually, hey, while I have you, let's do a backdate. Let's do a backdate just for fun. Let's date this to yesterday. Hello, welcome. I need problem 4, not problem 3. Doi. All right. Actually, I created the repo today. Let's see if it lets me backdate it. I'm curious. Let's play with it a little bit. All right, so I actually have the actual string written down here that I can use it again. All right, let's put it so yesterday was April 31st, right? Yeah. Or April 30th. 30 days has September, yeah, all that. All right, so I'm going to just change my little string here. And I'll paste it in. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to commit this bad boy yesterday. And so how you can do that is you can just say git commit like we always do, and then have a date value here. So -- date. And then you can use a variety of different strings. You can use a date time if you want. So you could say like 4/30/2022, and then have a time. If you want a specific time, in most cases, if you don't specify a time, it'll just add the current time. It'll change the date, but it'll keep the current time. So in that case, most of the time, I don't care about the specific time. I just want I want my green squares on the proper date. So in this case, we'll commit it for yesterday. And so you have your date, you can have your message. In this case, I was doing code wars, and I was kind of spacing my code wars out to get some nice even green squares. So my message was filled in as code wars, but we'll change it here to be completed problem. And yeah, because I tend to be kind of uneven with the days that I do code wars. Some days I do a lot, some days I only do a few, and I wanted more even distribution. So that's what I was doing there. But yeah, 4:30, okay, complete problem, git commit. Hey, it doesn't matter. We're gonna get push, and we'll check my commit history. We'll make sure that went through the way we expect. So, so here's the repo here. We'll refresh this. Yeah. And so we can see that, I have the first 3 problems here, and then the 4th one. So everything did commit. And I wonder if we can see the actual specific. I'm still not too familiar with the. How do I see the history here? Can I see it in here? Oh yeah, there we go. So look at this. Latest commit yesterday. So it worked as expected. Yeah. So you can see the history right there. It says it was committed yesterday, even though we just did it, 30 seconds ago. Yeah. Yep. So neat little trick there. If for any reason you want to ever backdate your commits for any reason, I think you can also do an amend. As somebody pointed out earlier, you can also do an amend, I think, on existing commits. If you already committed something, you want to change the date on it. I believe you can also do do an amend to change the date as well. So, yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up the Eloquent JavaScript, but I'm happy to stick around a little bit if anybody has any questions on anything that we've done tonight. I know this was a lot. It's pretty dense. But again, this is one of those things where you power through it for now, understand what you can understand, and then review it again in a couple of weeks and see if you picked up anything new. And I'm sure we all will. I know I will. I usually do in these cases. Because I don't have 6 hours to devote to studying the text, right? But then, you come back and you pick up little bits at a time. Oh, Snarfin asked, what was static? Oh, so yeah, so in problem 2, we used a static method. So let's go ahead and let's look that up here. Oops, wrong one. Static. Yeah, all right. So let's look at statics. Okay. Yeah. So inside a class declaration, which is what we did, right? Inside a class declaration, methods that have static written before their name are stored on the constructor. So the temperature class allows you to write temperature dot from Fahrenheit 100 to create a temperature using degrees Fahrenheit. So let's look at status. Let's look at the static method there. So in this case, since the from Fahrenheit was declared as static, you can write it as temperature dot from Fahrenheit on the constructor itself. So let's see how we call it down here. Yeah. So in this case, instead of having to declare group equals new group first, we were just able to say let group equal group dot from, and call, and like basically essentially immediately call that static method directly on our group. Yeah, so we didn't have to say group equals new group whatever and then group dot from whatever. We were essentially just able to say group dot from, immediately pass in arguments, and call that static method immediately. And like Rascal says, math.max is a static method. Yeah, you're passing in the arguments on the on math without having to say like new math and then like math equals new math and then math max. Yeah. GMAC, how did tic-tac-toe go? I saw you on my floor on Thursday. Yeah, we actually finished it. Well, we got it working. I mean, was it the most efficient? Nope, but we made a working tic-tac-toe game with win conditions. So I feel like we did pretty well. Yeah, I had a good group. Folks at different levels, but everybody, pitched in and contributed to, everybody in the group contributed, which was really great. Whatever they were able to contribute. There's even one person in the group who felt like they didn't have much to contribute, but then in the end, they caught an error that was like driving us around in circles, and they were the one to be like, "Wait, isn't there supposed to be like don't you have that bracket in the parentheses switched?" And we did, and that fixed the whole problem. We'd been spinning our wheels for like 15 minutes. And so kind of like what Leon was saying earlier today in office hours, even if you feel like maybe, oh gosh, everybody, I don't have anything to contribute, I don't know what to do, if you're paying attention, you might be the one that fixes the error that's been just driving everybody up the wall. And then that literally happened in my tic-tac-toe group. Is this one person was just like, wait, that's wrong, and we're like, yeah, and then everything worked after that. So everybody can always contribute something. Absolutely. And sometimes it's that one crucial thing that makes everything else work. Hey, no problem, Skim Puff. No problem, Ryan. Yeah. And two, also, Leon was mentioning today, about like finding your why, right? Finding the thing that kind of drives you. And it could be money, which is perfectly valid. Could be a desire to learn. In my case, it's the fact that I truly dig, hanging out with you guys and teaching you guys and that kind of thing. And, if you're not sure, if you're having trouble finding your why, one of them might be that, I recognize a lot of the names that I see on every single one of my streams. I see them pop up and I'm like, oh, hey, it's them. They're here today. And so even if you're struggling finding your why, at the very least, know that I see your names and I recognize them, and I'm always like, oh, hey, so and so came back, which is really cool. So that can be a why as well if you're struggling with finding your why. Yeah. Also, too, last thing, I have moved all of my streams. All of my streams up to April 23rd have been moved to YouTube. They're on my YouTube channel. I can share a link to the channel. Also, you can find the links in House Hamilton, Women in Tech. I don't have that bot. I need to set that bot up, Ryan. I need to set that command up. I'll get you a manual link here in a second. You can find the links in House Hamilton, Women in Tech, or Catch Up Crew. They're in threads at the top of the channel. Just click on the little hashtag at the top of each of those channels. And in that, you'll find a thread with my name on it, and you'll find an exhaustive list of links to all of my videos. Okay. And that should be a link to my channel. You can try it out. Make sure it works. I think it should. Theoretically. And yeah, I'll keep moving things to the YouTube channel. I'm planning to do it every week because it takes a long time for the uploads to process. It takes like multiple hours for the process to complete from going from Twitch to YouTube. So I'm going to try to really stay on top of it so I don't have to spend hours and hours and hours waiting for videos to process. Yeah, hey, no problem at all. It makes me happy to see folks learning and enjoying my streams and learning to code. So how about if there's no more questions, maybe let's think about setting up a raid. So it takes me a minute or two to set up the raid. So feel free to ask questions if you have them while I'm working on that. Okay, let's look at a raid. Okay, get to my channel. Okay, I'm gonna set up a raid. We'll see who's online. Oh, hey, my fellow stream team member. Hello, it's Rufio. It just went online. I just got a notification. So how about we go hit them up? If you haven't seen Rufio yet, they're super fun, super chill. She really likes birds. So if you like birds, y'all will get along really well. And I believe Rufio is probably working on her talking dictionary. So I'm going to set up the raid now and we will kick it off. Okay, getting set up, getting going, almost done. You're welcome. I will see you guys on Wednesday. Looking forward to it. All right. Rating now. See you soon.